Hello, everybody. Um, so this is my first time streaming on YouTube, so um, please bear with me. I'm not sure if you can hear me. I'm sure there's a way of actually looking and finding out if people can hear me. So okay, yes. So I think I can see what's going on here. Hello, everybody. Oh yeah, I can see the chat now. Sorry, I'm new at this, brand new at this stuff. So bear with me. Oh yeah, here it is. Yeah. Sorry, I'm new at this, brand new at this stuff. So bear with me. Oh yeah, here it is. Okay, sorry about that. First time doing this. So hello everybody. This is Rahul, Rahul Sehgal here, and thank you so much for joining this live stream. And thank you so much to VIT Bhopal for hosting me and organizing this live stream. And this is my first time ever hosting a YouTube live stream. So, yeah, okay, here we are. So, also, disclaimer, if it rains and the internet goes out, I'm going to switch to my Geo. And if I switch to my Geo, then it's going to be a little bit jerky, right? Because it's not as fast as my broadband connection. So, with that being said, let's start off. So let me introduce myself a little bit. My name is Rahul Sehgal, and I used to be in the Merchant Marine. I joined the Merchant Marine. I was in the Merchant Navy when I was about 18 years old, and then I was there for almost 15 years in the Merchant Marine. And after that, one day, because I used to play a lot of games, and one day I said, you know what, I don't want to be in the Merchant Navy anymore, and I want to make games. Yeah, just like so yeah, so I was there at Vancouver Film School, 2008, 2009, and I graduated 2009. And right after that, I joined Piranha Games. So Piranha Games is a pretty, it's a small niche studio in Vancouver, and I was there for a few months, and it was awesome. I learned a lot, and after that, I came back to India and I joined Gameloft as their lead game designer. And I was there for approximately 1 year. And after that, I wasn't so happy with the kind of games I was making. So I decided to make games on my own. And that's the time I started teaching. So I quit Gameloft and I set up my own company called Roach Interactive. And I made a few games. I made a mobile game, I made a PC game, and I also teach through Roach Interactive. So I'm still a director, but only part time. And what I do is that my main job is that I am the creative lead of a studio owned by GVC Holdings. Now, GVC is the world's largest online gaming company, and I am the creative lead of their in-house game studio. So that's what I do right now. Besides doing a lot of stuff, a lot of other stuff. So that's about me. So next, I want to talk about what we are going to be discussing in today's chat. So I want to give you a little bit of an overview of everything and then get into the specifics. So now, as you can see, the game industry is absolutely huge, and the most interesting thing is that the game industry is a very very young industry. It was set up in the 70s. It's only about 30 to 40 years old if you look at it. And the crazy thing is that this is 2018 and it was $109 billion market, and that's compared to television, which is 82. That's not even half, and film is this tiny little thing off in the distance, and if you look at music, that's even smaller. So gaming is apps games and gaming. So when I say gaming, it includes gambling as well. So gaming is an absolutely huge worldwide market, and it is getting bigger, and it's beating everybody else hollow. So gaming is definitely the future, but it's still a very very young industry. It's very important to remember that. The next thing to remember is that it is a tech enabled industry, so which means that tech is something that evolves very fast. It evolves on a daily basis, on a weekly basis. What is happening now, what's happening today is old a month later, right? So gaming and games, the games industry moves very fast. It gets disrupted almost continuously. And about 15 years ago, there was a massive revolution in video games, and that was Unity. So Unity was this engine for the people, by the people, of the people, and it made everyone and their mother and their dog and their father, it made everybody a game maker. Like anybody could make games. The tech the tech barrier, the financial barrier, the skill barrier was really brought down by Unity, and anybody could make a game. And also at the same time, smartphones came in. So for games, it was the perfect storm. So you had a brand new engine and you had a brand new platform in which anybody could upload games, anybody could play games. So it was a massive revolution. So about 10 to 12 years ago, there was a massive revolution in the gaming industry, and that was brought by Unity and the smartphone. So that's important to kind of remember that. Okay. And the thing is that games and gaming have also spilled over to other fields. Everything is gamified. Like Zomato is gamified. Make My Trip is gamified. Paytm is gamified. You get scratch cards. So everybody is feeding onto the games industry. And if you work in the games industry, you can also find a job probably in the app making industry or some other associate or the education industry. I mean, look at what Byju's is doing. Education is being gamified massively. So gaming is spilling over into other domains as well. That's a big thing these days. So the one thing that I want to teach you, to make point, is that it is a very young industry, and it is a very flexible industry. So there is no right or wrong way of doing it. So there is no dogma attached to it. What I am telling you is based on my experience, and it is very much possible that somebody has done the same thing a different way. And if there's some, if their experience is different, or if they're saying that what Rahul is saying is not exactly correct, it's true, because they have done something a different way. So whatever I am about to tell you is based on my experience. It is not dogma. So please understand that there is no right or wrong way. There are best practices, but there is no fixed path for you to follow. You have to make your own path, pretty much. So about this presentation is mostly focused towards noobs, people who have not made games, people who are new to the gaming industry, who want to make games. If you are experienced, if you've got 5-10 years of experience, great, come and watch the show, but you'll know a lot of this stuff. But people who are just starting off in games, the idea is that I want to set expectations right. I want to kind of strip away all the all the illusion, and a lot of stuff I say will be a bit harsh in the sense that you may not like to hear it, but it's the truth. And as an instructor, as a mentor, it is my job to tell you what it's really like in the game industry. I've been through a lot of ups and downs, and I want you to have the right mindset as you start making games and as you get into the game industry. So, keeping that in mind, let's go. So, principle number one is that your game career is not going to go as you expect. Okay, and I'll tell you why. The thing is, most people who want to join the game industry, they join the game industry because they play games. So if you play Call of Duty, you're going to be like, I play Call of Duty. I want to make firstly, I want to work on Call of Duty, and or I want to make a game which is exactly like Call of Duty. And that's great. It's a great ambition, and that may come true at some point in your career, but the chances of that happening straight off the bat are that much. It could happen. It could happen, but the chances are about that much. I'm going to be honest with you. Okay, so another thing to remember is that India is primarily a mobile game market. So most of the companies that are here are mobile game companies, and that's exactly the kind of games that you're going to get to make. There are a few console and PC companies, but they're small and they have maybe 5, 10, 15, 20 employees. So remember that at least within India, the games industry is mostly mobile focused. So have your and there's nothing wrong with mobile games, but that's what it is. If you're looking to be making console games and PC games, and if you're looking to be making, if you're looking to be, working on Dota straight out of college, then that's probably not going to happen. It's definitely a worthwhile goal to have to motivate yourself, but it will probably happen down the line. It will probably not happen as soon as you graduate from college, maybe not within 1 year, 2 year, 3 years. So my advice to you is to take the opportunities you get. Say suppose you have an interview call for a mobile game company. Don't be like, oh, who's gonna make? I don't like mobile games. I don't want to do this. I'm a gamer. I don't play mobile games. So don't have that attitude. Go in there and take the opportunity that you have been given, and put your heart into it. And at some point, I promise you, if you focus, you will get a chance to play on the games that you love. At some point down the line, if you stick to your passion, if you stay focused, it will definitely happen. But keep in mind, have your expectations right about that particular thing. So the other important thing is that your taste in games may change. I'm sure there are people here who play racing games and Dota and hardcore gamers, and if someone told them, you know what, you'll be making a Candy Crush game, they would be shocked. They're like, no, 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 I'm never going to make a casual game or a hyper casual game. But you know what? It's possible that 3 years down the line, that's all you play. It happens to so many people. I'm a hardcore gamer, and my favorite game right now is poker. Okay, like I play as much as I can, but poker is absolutely my favorite game. If somebody had told me 5 years ago that Rahul, your favorite game is going to be poker, I would not have believed them. But that's the way it is right now. So it's possible that your taste in games will change as you grow up, as you mature, and your career goes on. So be aware of that. So that was principle number one. Now, principle number two is learn to find the fun. Now, what do I mean by learn to find the fun? So let me give you a little anecdote. So I was at Vancouver Film School. I graduated from Vancouver Film School. And right after that, I got a job with Piranha Games, right, in Vancouver. And I used to play shooters. I used to play shooters all the time. And so I got a job as an intern, and I walked into the studio, and they put me down and said, "This is the game you're testing," and it was a NASCAR racing game. So, and I had never played a racing game before in my life, and I was officially a tester on a NASCAR game. I didn't play those games, so I was in a bit of shock. But then I said, "Okay," and I sat down and I started playing the game, and like it was a week before I could even finish a race. Everybody was looking at me and thinking like, this tester, he's supposed to be a tester and he can't even finish a race. So I couldn't finish a race for a week. But then at some point I got really, because I played, and I got really good. And when I left months later, my times were the best in the company because I was playing that game day in and day out, and I started to enjoy it. I started to find the fun in a brand new genre. Again, I moved back to Hyderabad, and guess what? I was working on a Pokemon game, right? And I had never played a Pokemon game. I used to think Pokemon games were for kids, but then I had a job making a Pokemon game. So I took it up and I started playing, and it took me a while. It took me maybe for 2 weeks. I was like, what is I didn't feel it. But in my third week, when I had this crazy leveled up monster, and like I was just spawning everybody, that's when I felt the fun. I understood what it was like to enjoy that particular game. So I found the fun. Um, so it's a huge plus to be able in your career. It is a huge plus to be able to play and experience games of different genres. Now, if you're going to have a long, rich career in video games, it's important to let go of your gamer ego that says that these are good games and these are bad games. If you play these games, you're a real gamer, and if you don't play these games, so this whole gamer ego needs to be put to a side. So learn to be able to find the fun in any kind of game, experience and play different kinds of games, and have a broad outlook when it comes to games. Have a broad variety of genres that you understand. So when you make games, you will have a rich pool of games and game experiences to build upon. Because also what's happening is that when you're making games, a lot of genres are spilling over. A lot of RTS mechanics are going into casual games, and hardcore mechanics are going into casual games, and the other way around. So there's a lot of switching around and a lot of pulling from here and there. So the more games you know, the more games you play, it's better for you. Also, it will give you a better chance at being a leader in the game industry. Always remember that at some point you want to be a technical lead, or you want to be a creative director, or you want to be a creative lead, or you want to be a producer or a senior producer, and you don't get to be one of those unless you have wide experience. If you're just a Dota guy and you're just playing Dota day and night and that's all you play, you're probably not going to rise very high in the game industry. So that was point number two. Now, coming to point number three, is that games need to make money. This may seem obvious, but it's not, because when you are young, when you want to make beautiful things, you don't think about the money. You don't think about the commercial aspect. You only think that you want to make something beautiful. You have this need to create an experience. Like, it's very easy to get wrapped up in the creative process and to concentrate on making beautiful things and excellent experiences that you want to make, and something beautiful and different, and to forget about the commercial aspect of making games. But the truth is that, to pay salaries, to pay rent, and to buy diapers or pay school fees, or whatever, food, right? You need money, and unless the game makes money, you're not going to get that. And the company is not. I mean, if you have a job and if you're making games and they're not making money, well, you're not going to have a job anymore. So please be aware that games need to make money. Now, so what you have to do is that you have to balance the creative aspect. Now, this is a tricky one, because if you just keep making games that you have no feeling for, even that's not good. Like you'll burn out really quickly. You have to enjoy the games that you make, but you have to work hard to find a balance between the creative aspect and the commercial aspect, right? So, and as an indie, if you're an indie and you want to make games, remember that you have to be a businessman first and a developer second, right? So the business part and the creative part need to be balanced, and whoever makes games needs to be very very aware that you will need to compromise on your vision and on your grand dream to make sure that your game is viable in the market. It needs to make money. So you can balance creativity and the commercial aspect. You need to kind of de-risk your game project. You need to have a methodology in which you can create something and calculate the risk of it failing and de-risk your game. So for example, one way to do it is by doing market research. So if you're going to be making a game, before you make the game, do your market research. Is there a market for this game? Don't like make the game and then look for a target market after it's done. Please make sure that there is a target market for your game and test your game. So games is the one thing that you can actually put out there a little early and get feedback. You can't do that with a movie. You come to know if your movie is a hit or a flop the day that you release it, right? If you're going to be releasing it, that's the only day you know about it. But for a game, you can have a beta, or you can have the alpha, and you can give it to people. And if they say, "Man, this game sucks," then you say, "You know what? I think I need to improve my game." So you know early if people are not going to like your game. So you can de-risk your game by applying some methodologies like testing and market research and prototyping as well. So taking player feedback early. So one trick is to do a kind of a ratio. So if you have a game, you're making a game, one way is to keep about 70% of mechanics, 70% of what players already know, and about 30% new. So that generally I find is a decent ratio of 70% established and 30% trying new things, experimental stuff. So when players play a game, they understand what it is. Now there is a caveat to this. Okay, so I'm not saying don't make crazy, awesome, revolutionary, brilliant stuff. Please do. The time to do that, A, is when you're young, is when you're at college, is if your game doesn't make money, it doesn't matter because mom and dad are paying the bills, or if you're still in school, or you don't have responsibility. So that is the time to be experimental. That is the time to make crazy, awesome stuff. And if you do that, then when you do have responsibility, when the risk of when the price of failing goes up, you will know how to make games. So do it if you want to do crazy, awesome, creative stuff. Do it a little bit early in your career rather than waiting for much later. Also, the other time to do crazy creative stuff is when you've established yourself and when you have a bunch of money and you've made 10 games or you've made 8 games and you know how games make money. That is the time you can do a little bit more experimentation because at that point you can afford to fail. Okay, so that was principle number 3, which is that games need to make money. Now, principle number 4 is that teamwork is a superpower. Now, let me explain that. Now, most of us who want to make games, we have this thing of I can do it by myself, or I can do it me and my friend. Look at Flappy Bird, right? Flappy Bird was just one guy and he made, I don't know, 14, $15 million, whatever. So if he can do it, why can't I? So that's the exception. So in my 10 years of game making, the best games that I have made, the best projects that I have worked on, most successful ones were the ones in which I worked really well with the team. Now, if you're looking at a AAA game, and if you're playing a AAA game, AAA games are made by teams of hundreds of people who work not even in the same place. So sometimes somebody is working in San Francisco, somebody's in India, somebody's in Japan, somebody's in, I don't know, Brazil. So you have different teams in different parts of the world all working together, hundreds, sometimes 1,000 people working on one particular game. So they're made by teams. Now, it's very important that you are not going to making the game all by yourself, and lots of people will be involved. Now these people could be and will be designers, programmers, artists, testers, producers, data analysts, and game marketers. So it takes a team to make a game, and I'll be honest with you, this is one of the hardest parts of making games, is getting along with your teammates, is the communication, it's the talking, because everyone needs to understand what you're making, and everybody needs to pull together. And you will find people of different temperaments, you will find people of different competencies, you'll find some people who are very experienced and some people who are brand new, you will have people of different motivations, like some people like super enthusiastic about the game and the game industry, some people are like, oh, so it's, but you have to work with them, and that's hard. And some people don't communicate very well, like artists and creative people, they just want to be left by themselves, they just want to turn off the lights and just work on their own stuff. Testers, QA people, all like chit chat and very outgoing and very, very extroverted. So you have all kinds of people in a team with all kinds of variables, and it's sometimes pretty crazy. And the one thing to remember is you have to be patient. Okay. Also, one interesting thing is that everyone has ideas, right? Everybody in a game team is a creator, and everybody has ideas about the game. You may have a producer coming and saying, "Oh, you know what? This character's red hair doesn't look good. Can you make it blonde?" And you want to just, tell him, "What do you know? What are you talking about?" But you're like, "That's an interesting suggestion. I'll think about it." That's the way to do it. So you have to actually listen to everybody, even though, and not just like go in here and come out here, really listen. Okay. Everyone has creative ideas and they need to be respected and considered. Now, so also team size is a very interesting thing. Now, if you look at Scandinavian game companies, they have absolutely small teams. You look at these games, you look at the indie games, and you think, oh my God, this studio must have had at least 100 people, and it didn't. It turns out that that studio had 5 or 6 or 7 people. So they really, they really know how to make games with small teams, which means that a lot of people are multifunctional. A programmer may also be doing art, an artist may also be doing a bit of coding. So they're very, very functional teams. So size really doesn't matter. In this case, you can have a small team making a fantastic game if they're very highly motivated and organized people, or you could have a massive team of 100 people making absolute rubbish games. So it depends on how well the team communicates, how well the team bonds, how well the team gets along. So teamwork is absolutely, absolutely a superpower. If your team works well, if your team coordinates well, if you guys get along, if you divide the responsibility well, I promise you, you will really, really, really be able to make a fantastic project, right? If there is one mantra to remember in teamwork, whenever you're in doubt, whenever you are having conflict in your team, the one mantra to say to yourself is, it's not about me, it's about the game. Again, it's not about me, it's about the game. So put your own ego, what you don't like, your hurt, put it to a side. If it's good for the game, even if somebody you don't like, this dude, you don't like his face, and he said something really useful, that and something really good for the game, accept it, because it's not about you, it's not about him, it's not about your ego, it's about the game. The game is the point, not your ego. So once again, remember the mantra, it's not about me, it's about the game. That is what will help you to work well in a team. So that was principle number 4. Principle number 5 is scope your game well. Now, what exactly does it mean to scope a game, right? Now, to be able to explain it in one way is कि हमारी औकात क्या है, right? That is one way of being able to explain scope. Now, um, yeah, so scoping your project, it basically means asking yourself the following question: what will it take to make this game? And is it something that I or we can do? So, what is this game project? How big is it? How small is it? And can I do it? You have to honestly ask yourself, is this really something that I or we are capable of? Now, there's a fine line that you need to stretch yourself, right? You need to learn new things. When you make a game, when you make something new, you will be your brain, your mind, your skills will be really expanding very fast. You will have to learn and do a lot of things, but it should be within the limit of, if you say, okay, I have about 3 months to do this game, you should be able to finish the game in about 5 or 6. It shouldn't be that you think that I'm going to make this game in 3 months and it turns out it's like a 2 year game, and that is very very common. So if you are starting out now, I know that it's very difficult to estimate that. You may have a game idea and you think, how do I know how long this game is going to take? How do I know if this game is going to take 3 months or 5 or 6 months? Like, how do I do this calculation? And this is why scoping is kind of is something that you learn over time. It's something that you get better at as you get more experience. So this is where it really helps when you have a project, is to have a mentor who can help you to scope up your project and say, you know what, this game is a bit big for you. Why don't you cut this feature and this feature and this feature and this feature and then make this, right? So but there are a few methods that even beginners can use. The key to learning to scope your game is to do a good pre-production. Now, pre-production is when you ask the questions: why, that is, why are we making this game? What, which is what are we making? And how are we going to make this game? So pre-production is when you ask these questions and you answer them. I have a YouTube channel in which I have videos in which I talk about all this stuff, and I also teach it in my class. So scoping your game depends on your pre-production. So your pre-production has to be thorough. You have to make documentation, right? So once you have, for example, an asset list, once you do your documentation and you know, okay, I have 150 sound assets and 150 graphic assets, and you sit down and you write, okay, each asset is going to take 2 hours, and you add it up, that means 250 hours. Okay, 250 hours means that it's going to take me 3 months to do, right? And similarly, you divide up the programming tasks as well. So if once you learn to do a good pre-production, you will have an idea of what scope means. It's possible that you may get the scope wrong in your first game, but as you go along in your career, you will be able to scope out better. So starting off, like when you start making projects, it's very common for people to say, you know what, I'm going to make StarCraft. I'm going to make a game exactly like StarCraft, or I'm going to make GTA 8. And you're going to make that scale of game, and obviously it's not going to happen, right? Because those games take hundreds of people years to make. So it's not a good idea to start making a big game starting off. Our ego as game makers says, I don't want to do that. I don't want to make a little platformer for mobile. That's not the kind of game I play. But if you're starting off, I really encourage you, and even at VIT, I encouraged my students of first and second year, rather than opening up Unity and making 3D games, forget about that for the moment. Forget about making 3D games for the moment. Make simple 2D platformers, make complete games. Make top-down games. Make something simple, make something with a beginning, a little bit of story, mechanics, power-ups. Make something like that. Do not start your game projects by making a 3D project. That should come later. Start off with a simple 2D game, start off with a platformer, start off with a side scroller, start off with a top-down shooter, or a tiny little RPG, which is isometric. Start off with a simple game, At some point you will and you can graduate onto making 3D games. So that's just a tip. Also, when you're starting out, make small games. It's very tempting to straight off the bat want to make these epic massive games, but please make small polished games. It's much better to have, like a 10-minute experience that you made, but you really polished it out and you were able to put it out. So you will have the confidence that you have made a complete game from beginning to end. Otherwise, it's possible that you may start this gigantic project, make like 10% of it, and then quit because it was too big, and that is very demoralizing. Incomplete projects which you could not do are very, very demoralizing. So to prevent that from happening in the beginning, make small games, scope your game well, understand what you're about to make. Okay, so we have about 25 minutes left, so I think I'm making decent progress. Let me see if any of you have any particular questions. You can start typing them. Let me have a look at my. Okay, lots of comments. All right. Whoa. Hello, hello, good evening. There's like a million hellos here. No specific. There are some. Um, okay. All right. So, principle number 6. Okay. This is super important, and this is, I like to say that making games, the day you learn how to make games is the day that your creative ego is just completely destroyed. Like it does a Dr. Manhattan. You think you're this great awesome creator, and then reality comes and it just shatters your creative ego into a billion pieces. And then many people at that point, they say, we can't do this. They walk away from game development. But if you can take the pieces of your creative ego which have been shattered and put them back together somehow, then you become you really become a game maker. And this comes from feedback. Now, what do you mean by feedback? So the only way to make a game better, or for that matter yourself better as a game maker, is to get feedback from people. Right now, this is really hard. This is not simple, as feedback is basically criticism. Right, it's like the other side. When someone says I'm giving you feedback, what they're saying is that they're criticizing you. They're saying this is bad, this is bad, this is bad, change this, then they change that. So it hurts. It's very, very hard not to take feedback personally and become defensive. Normally, what happens is that when we ask somebody for feedback, what we are actually doing is we are looking for praise, right? We're looking for that person to say, dude, this is awesome. Did you make this all by yourself? Fantastic. It feels good to hear that. So it kind of gives an ego boost, but it doesn't really help us to make the game better. And in the beginning, everything we do sucks, right? Our games suck, our videos suck, our live stream sucks, everything sucks. And the only way to get better at it is to get feedback from people. And that process is kind of hard. So also, getting feedback, there has to be some structure to getting feedback. So, for example, a really, really good way of getting feedback for a beta of a game, for example, is to give out a Google form. Now, you can give out a Google form and you can ask specific questions of people. It's no use saying, was the art nice? Did you like the game? They'll be like, no. And that's no use. So break it down into, what did you like about the art? Did you like the colors? Did you like the art style? Did you think it matched with the gameplay? What did you think about the sound? Was it boring? Was it repetitive? Was there enough range to it? So when you're asking for feedback, ask specific questions. Was this particular thing good? If you ask broad questions, you're going to get very broad answers, and those broad answers you will not be able to use. The other thing is that when you get feedback from people, you are going to get a lot of noise, right? People are going to say, that character is cool, but why don't you give him why don't you put a laser? Why don't you put a helmet on his head and that shoots a laser? That would be awesome. And you just don't know what to say to that. And the best thing says, thanks, man. I'll definitely think about it. So you're going to get 70% or more of noise. So now you're going to have to learn to filter out the positive feedback, the good feedback from that 70% of noise. And this again, it takes time. A good way is that if, for example, I make these videos and on my YouTube channel, I put about 10 videos up, and three people told me that the intro volume was really high compared to my video. And if three people tell me that, I'll be like, okay, that's about 30% people, like 30% people have said this, so I definitely need to look at it. So also a useful tip when people are playing your game is that watch them. Don't just like give your game to them and then just walk away and have a cup of coffee and then come back and say, so how was it? Don't do that, because they're going to say, oh, it was great, it was fine, I loved it. What you need to do is stand there, look at them, look at their expressions, look at what they're doing in the game, because there's a lot of stuff that they won't remember, and they're polite. They're not going to say, I got stuck here, or this wasn't good, or it's possible that they got stuck and they think, oh, maybe I suck at this game and my skill isn't so good. And so there's a lot going on there. So it's really a good idea when someone is playing your game to just quietly observe what's going on, see how they're playing. Are they understanding the tutorial? Like, are they asking you, dude, what do I do now? They should never ask you. The tutorial should explain everything. So it's very important to look at people when they're playing your game. Ask them for sure, but take that with a pinch of salt. Like, look at what they're doing. Um, Now, also a very important point is that good feedback can come from anywhere. Okay, don't like if, especially in your company, a good feedback can come from a tester, from a developer, even your like. There have been times when the chief operating officer of my company has played my game and given us feedback saying, you know what, change this, and I was like, you know what, he's right. And he's a chief operating officer. He's a really senior executive who knows his games. And sometimes I found feedback from him to be incredibly valuable. So do not dismiss feedback based on the source that it comes. It could be anybody. Just because it comes from an expected source, do not disregard feedback. Now, also, um, the important thing about feedback is that it's possible that you're dealing with someone and that person says that person plays the game, somebody from your team or somebody higher up or the marketing, they say this art is bad, and it's possible that you've been working on this game for a year and a person just tells you the art of this game is bad, and like you want to punch them in the face. You really do. And but you just have to take a deep breath and be like, thank you for your feedback, can you be more specific? Because the truth is that most people don't know how to give feedback. They don't have the vocabulary. They're not game creators. They're not designers. They're not artists. They don't know how to say things. For example, it could be something as simple as maybe they didn't like the art style, or maybe they didn't think that the colors were suiting, they didn't think the color palette was appropriate for the mood of the game. Right now, that's something which is easily changeable, and it could be good feedback. It could be that you didn't get your color palette right, and the person says the art sucks, and you get mad, and then you go home and you cry or whatever, and then you miss out on the feedback. So a good point is just take a deep breath and say, thank you for your feedback, can you be a bit more specific? Is it this, is it that? So I've had times when I've had feedback and people have just given me blanket bad feedback on something, and I've dug with them, respectfully ask them, is this it, is this it, is this it, is this it? And you can find specifics of feedback. So sometimes you need to dig with people when they give you feedback of yourself, even about yourself in your company. It's possible that people may give you a very broad statement, and you have to kind of take a step back, take a deep breath, kind of swallow your ego a little bit and say, can you be a little bit more more specific? And you will actually get the bottom of what they're talking about. So feedback, very, very important, super, super important when it comes to your games. Look for it, learn how to handle it, learn how to filter it. And yeah, so just be aware of your creative ego and be aware that it's going to be shattered and you have to put it back together. And that's going to happen through feedback. Okay, that was principle number 6. Now coming on to principle number 7. This is a really important one, and this is one that I've had a lot of experience with, which is make friends with failure. Now, what exactly does it mean to make friends with failure? So, um, I mean, if you're going to be in your game career, you're going to be making lots of games. Hopefully you're making 5, 10, 15, 20 games, and it's not possible that they're all going to succeed. The other thing is that when you use the word failure, you have to define what success means. Now, if you're making your first game and your idea of success is that I want to make enough money with my first game to buy a mansion and a Ferrari and a private jet, well, then you're definitely going to. So you have to define what success is. If it's game, it's a success. If I learn the process of making games, if it gives me confidence, if it gets me a job, right, then that game is successful. So you before you start a game project, do not have unrealistic standards of what it is, what it means to succeed. So define for every project, define success realistically, right? Now, even when you do define success realistically, you're not going to get it many times. So, I mean, I make an average of 30, 40 games a year, right? Now, some of them make millions, but some of them they just bomb, they just go, and we are like, okay, that one didn't work out. Some work out, some don't work out, and despite you cannot succeed all the time with all your games. But the important thing is that you set yourself up to learn from this mistake. So when you succeed or you fail, always do a post-mortem. Look back, sit down quietly and say, okay, look at this project, what went well, what did not do well, right? So I made a game a few years ago, somewhere in the middle of my career. I made a game and I spent 2 years making that game. Okay, and it was really hard, and it was a passion project, and I put my heart and soul into it, and I think it was a beautiful, beautiful game. But of course, the mistake I made was that I didn't think of the target market. It was purely a passion project, and even though at the end of that I didn't make much money with it, I made some money, but not much money, nowhere near what I expected. But the thing is, it taught me really how to make games. So in that, it was a massive success. And at the end of it, I really spent a long time looking at that project. I looked at what I did right. I looked at what I did wrong. I deeply understood that I needed to be a businessman who needed to understand the target market before I made the game. So not making money with my game really, really taught me the importance of marketing, the importance of scoping a game, the importance of looking at a target market. So in that way, it was definitely not a failure. So every time you fail, make it a point to go back and look at what you did right and look at what you did wrong. And for example, if you're making a project and you abandon the project, look at what happened. Maybe your scoping was wrong. Maybe your scope was too big. Maybe you didn't choose your teammates very well. Maybe it's possible that you chose your teammates based on friendship. It's possible like this guy is my buddy. He doesn't know how to code, but fine, come on in. And that's probably why your game failed. You didn't choose good teammates. So look at it. Look at why things did not go out the way you wanted, and make sure that you learn from that and make friends with failure. It's going to happen. I promise you, a significant number of your games and your projects and everything you make, not just games, right? if you want to start something new, if you want to be creative, you know, the price of that is frequent failure. So you're going to fail, but whenever you do fail, you make sure that you analyze the hell out of that failure and you learn from it. So in that way, I would encourage you to make friends with failure. Now we have about, I think, 10 minutes left of the stream, and I'm going to be going to principle number 8. Now, I didn't have a good, I couldn't find a good meme, so it's just like this skeleton guy who's actually a king, sitting on a skeleton throne. So he's played the long game, and he's dead, but he's king now. So this is play the long game. Now this is kind of like a bit of a hard thing to explain to explain to a lot of people, but we all expect instant gratification, right? We think that if I ask you how long, if you're making games now, how long do you think it is going to take you to make X money or make X kind of game or be successful? I think you guys say 6 months, 1 year, maybe 2 years. It's possible that is going to be 5, 6, 7, 8 years. Okay, so essentially what I'm trying to say is that there will be no instant gratification. Okay, forget about the guy that made Flappy Bird and became successful overnight. Okay, your first game is going to suck, and only your mom, your sister, and your best friend are going to play it, and just that's what's going to happen. So just kind of be ready for that. You will have to play the long game. If you're starting to make games, you suck. Okay, just accept that, and accept that it is going to take a long time to get better, and it's going to take a lot of focus to get better. Now, how quickly you get better depends upon you, depends upon your passion. It depends on how much you can rein in your creative ego, how much you can take feedback, how much you can learn from your mistakes, right? So be be aware of that, and be aware that game making is very technical. It's very hard. Okay, and the competition out there is insane. Just go to the app store, um, or go to Steam and go to like page 10 of of the Steam store. On page 10 or on page 15, you're going to find fantastic games. You're going to find fantastic games that took months and months and months to make, and like 100 people downloaded them, right? So like this is kind of a bit harsh, but what I'm saying is that the competition out there is massive, and game making is technical and hard, and everyone and their dog is making a game and uploading it to Steam and the Play Store. It is crazy hard to make $10 from a game. Okay, it's even $1. So what I like to say is that it's hard to make a game. It's even harder to make money from a game these days. But not to say that it can't be done. It can definitely be done, but you're going to have to do it step by step, getting better and better, learning things. Because remember that games, to make a game successful, so many things have to go into it. You have to get everything right. Okay, you have to get art, experience, marketing, sound, story, game performance, lots more. You have to get everything right to have a successful game, and you have to either be part of a team that gets everything right, or if you're doing it by yourself, you have to learn each one of those things to get it right. So it's going to take a long time. But here's the thing. Game making is fantastic. Okay, I promise you that it's hard, but it's very, very rewarding when you're actually working on your game. If you love games, if you're making games, I promise you that time will fly by. You will not know, hours and hours and hours will disappear, because you will be in flow. Game making will consume you. It is very intense. You will be in a happy place when you make it, even when you're at a company, right? That's what I work in a game company, and when I'm actually in it, when I'm actually writing my documentation, when I'm playing the game, it doesn't feel like work, right? I don't know if I can call it fun, but it's very, very fulfilling. So game making is very, very fulfilling. It's very intense. and it consumes you, but it's not easy, right? It's not easy, and mostly it's not fun. So put the idea of easy and fun out, and be prepared for meaningful work, passionate work. So right, so it's going to take you longer than you probably expect, but I promise you, if you stick to it, it will happen, right? Okay, so now I have, let me look at my stream here. Let me look at some questions. I have about 10 minutes. Um, okay, lots of hi, hellos, everyone. Okay. Okay, so Sanchit is asking, sir, is it focusing on one aspect of game development better, or is it better to be jack of all trade? Excellent, excellent question. Now, the thing is that if you want to be a leader, you should have an understanding of the whole process. So if you are an artist, it's good to understand what the developer does. So writing a few lines of code, just to learn, and you can do all this stuff in the beginning of your career. Okay, beginning of career, when you're learning, when you're in college, you can do lots and lots of things. This is absolutely a golden time when you're young and you have lots of time to be able to do lots of different things. Because when you get senior, you won't have time. You'll be doing one particular thing and you won't have time to learn other things. So when you're young, try and learn different things so that you understand that process. But I would say, have a focus, whether it's design, whether it's art, whether it's 3D art, have a focus, go deep into your skill, but at the same time have an understanding of everything. So don't just focus on one thing completely at the cost of others. Be aware of everything that happens, all the processes that happen in your team, because it'll make you a better game maker, and later on you will be a better leader. You will be a much better leader of a game team. Anfas Qureshi is asking, most of game idea we think already exists and it discourages us a lot. What to do in that situation? So again, really good question. Don't worry too much about being unique. Okay, don't worry too much about, I want this awesome new brilliant game idea that will blow people's minds. It's not. So take an idea, take something that exists. For example, take a platformer, right? Take a platformer, and make it by yourself. Like I said, follow the 70-30 rule. 70% what is established, 30% make it new. The key to making a good game, to making a successful game, is not in how unique it is only, it is also in the polish, right? You can have a game that is not so unique but is nice and beautifully polished, and people will play it. So don't focus so much on new stuff. Focus on something, focus on maybe 70% of what exists, make 30% new, and polish the hell out of it. So that's important. Supanta is asking, is going with a niche genre with less audience better for indies for less competition? Yes, totally. Like if you're an indie, you are not really looking for a mass market audience. So even if you have a small audience, if you have a very particular, very niche audience, and you can make games for them and make them happy, that's absolutely a brilliant, brilliant strategy to have at the beginning of your career. I really think you should go for that. Inshallah is, how can I get honest feedbacks? Look, look at them playing the game, right? Somebody's asking, okay, nice name. Hey, what do I do if I'm mostly interested in the narrative and the story games? How do I prioritize what to learn? Now, if you are, now there are very few jobs which are like game narrative designer, right? So if you're interested in game narrative, what you're interested in essentially is game design. So be a designer, and have, like I said, play the long game, learn game design. I promise you, at some point, you're going to be able to focus more on the narrative and story in the games. Play the long game. Varun Vyas is having a rudimentary level of all skills required for game development required for building devs. Yes, it's not a requirement, but it's a plus. It's definitely a plus. How does Lalit is asking, how does mathematics play a big part in gaming? Definitely, especially in casino. Is in casino gaming, if you're a mathematician, you're going to be in massive demand, and people are going to be fighting over employing you, right? And you will be able to name your price because gaming mathematicians are really, really rare. They're the ones that make the math for casino games, and I work for a casino game company. And if you want to be a game mathematician, you know, massive. Can Agdeep is asking, can making game give a stable income? Yes, definitely. It can give you a stable income. Lots of game companies all over the world. And he's asking, should gaming be considered as a career? Hell yeah, of course. I mean, I showed you that slide. It's the world's biggest entertainment. It's bigger than movies. It's bigger than television. Of course, 100% it should be considered as a career. Tiago, my man. So, what are the main signs that my creative process is not working? At what point should I redo my scope? That's really interesting. So, I think that it comes from feedback. If your creative process is reflected through the people who use what you create, right? So if you're creating something, and firstly, if you're not able to finish what you're creating, then that's definitely a problem, or that's definitely you definitely have a scope problem or you have a motivation problem. But if you keep making the size of your project smaller and smaller, and once you start finishing them, so once you start finishing a project and you start putting it out there, then that's a massive improvement. If you make a small project, put it out there, you get feedback from the users of the project, that's how you make progress. So if you're not finishing a game, or if you're finishing games and they're not improving, right? If one sucked and the next one sucked less, then that's improvement. Then your creative process is improving. So I hope that answered the question. Abhigyan is, how much importance should we give the lore story of the game compared to the gameplay? Again, really good question. It depends on the genre. Now, in the beginning, when you're going to be creating simple little games, don't like, I get very irritated when somebody's making a 2 minute game and they spend 5 hours talking about the mother and the protagonist and how the father was kidnapped, and then this happened, and then they went to the other world, and they spent 35 minutes just describing us the story of a 2 minute game. For God's sakes, just forget about the story in the beginning. Okay, in the beginning of your career, focus on mechanics, focus on experience. Just be like, guy's father was killed, revenge story, done. Okay, so don't be into story and lore in the beginning. There will be time for that. In the beginning, just focus on gameplay, focus on experience, forget about story in the beginning. Right, how much can a fresher expect her annual income? Good question. Now, I know for a fact that a fresher can start at 20, 30, 40,000 rupees a month, depending on the kind of company. That is generally from a start. So if you're a beginner developer, you can be earning, I don't know how to calculate. You can calculate the annual income. 20, 30, 40,000 rupees a month is a decent income. A third is asking, is experience in all aspects of game making necessary to become a game designer? To become a game designer, it's a good question. Now, to be a game designer, I'm a designer, but I know how code works. Like, I can write code, but I like to say that I write code the way a chicken flies. Okay, like really ugly and only to save its life. So I can write code. So I understand how code works. I can do really bad art, but I can. So I understand how art works. So I have put my fingers into those particular pies. So as a designer, it is a very, very, if especially you want to be a good designer, a world-class designer, have some artistic ability, have simple coding ability. Don't just be like, I'm a designer, I don't do that kind of stuff. Anjali is asking, is it important to? I think Anjali's question I already answered. Ashwin, what will you value more? A longer gameplay or a great story or an amazing game world? Now, this depends on people, right? I'm a skill gamer. Like, I don't care about story. I just want to kill people. So you put me in a story in which I have to talk to NPCs and solve puzzles. I'll be like, oh no, no, just give me people to kill. So it depends from person to person. It depends on the genre. Once again, if you're making a game, look at the target market. Right now, I have a class in which I teach the different kinds of fun. And I think I'll make a video on that particular thing soon. So that will really be able to answer this question. You have to understand what kind of fun your target market wants. Now, if they are the kinds who are looking for story, then give them a story. Right? If your target market is not interested in story, if your target market is just interested in getting shiny weapons and killing people, then give them that. So the answer to that is don't make as an assumption, do your pre-production, understand who your target market and make it for them. Okay. How can we start indie game developers? Wow, that's a big question. Hopefully I'll make a video for that sometime soon. So here's my channel. I started it up recently, and all these questions I will try and answer by YouTube videos. So if you guys want to subscribe, if you guys want to put in some questions over there about what videos you want, about what specific things you want, I can answer them through my videos. So that's a pretty big question to ask. How can I be indie game developer? I will answer that at some point. So Arka Mazumdar, so in general, what should a person team prioritize on when they are trying to proceed to make a game? Is it to make a game according to cost and audience taste, or focus on money part? Well, if you are going to make a game to an audience's taste, that is focusing on the audience part. So definitely focus on what the audience wants, but don't just give them the same stuff. Don't just like clone a game and give them the same thing. They already have that. So if you want to copy something, give them something new. Give them a new story, give them new characters, give them new mechanics. You know. Atharv Borkar, how do you see designer bridge the gap between the programmer and bohemian artist thinking? Good question. That's a long answer, which I think I have a video upcoming for that. So that's basically the designer's job, right? The designer is a bridge between the artist and the developer. So which is why it's really important to understand both minds. So it's important, and you can't understand a developer's mind unless you do some developing, unless you've written some code, unless you understand the pain that the developer is going through. Similarly, you can't understand the pain that the artist is going through unless you actually made some art. Doesn't matter if it's shitty, you need to make some art. So you understand what the artist is going through. So once you empathize with both of them as a designer, you can be that bridge between them. Can being a game tester be considered as a separate job option? Awesome question, brilliant question. I'm so sorry I did not really talk about game testing. Game testers are the unsung heroes of the game industry. Okay, like it's the least glamorous job, but trust me, testers are fantastic. Testers are what make the game what it is. They quietly work behind the scenes. Yes, testing is a massive part of making games. In fact, I would definitely make a video specifically about testing. It's fantastic. Testing is absolutely fantastic, and you can definitely be a tester. You can be a test lead. You can get like a six-figure salary. You can be a QA lead. That's a really big part of game making. It's 100%. Okay. Is working with game testers benefits us in game development? Is working with same team members benefits us in game development? I didn't understand that. Is it worthy on working on the idea that already exists? Yes, definitely work on something. Don't just go for unique all the time. Definitely work on something that all exactly. How do I land a gaming gig while in college? I'll answer that some other point. All right, guys. So I think that's pretty much it. Thank you so much for being here, and I hope you got some gyan. And if you guys, you guys can subscribe to me as well, as I teach at VIT as well. So hopefully once this whole thing is over, once the apocalypse is over and we get back to normal, I'll see you guys at VIT at some point, and I'll be able to answer all these questions. So thank you so much, and be safe and create. And if you have any questions, you can find me on LinkedIn, find me on Facebook. I also have Up Your Game also has a Facebook page. Follow me on Instagram and keep in touch, and I'll be able to answer as many questions as I can. So thank you so much, and have a good night.